Hello, everyone, and welcome to the University of Surrey Postgraduate Virtual Open Days. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are in the world. Please do let us know in the chat where you're joining us from. We're delighted that you're keen to find out more about postgraduate study at Surrey, and we hope that you'll find our events this week informative and inspiring. Before we get started with this webinar on applying for a Master's at Surrey and looking at AI at the University of Surrey, here's a quick reminder of everything else happening this week. We have webinars happening every day, including a special session on Surrey Business School programs and today's look at AI at Surrey. Some academics do still have time slots available for a 15-minute call if you'd like to make a booking. And we have more events on the website, including our immersive virtual campus tour. Throughout this webinar, feel free to post your questions in the chat and we'll get to answer as many as we can towards the end of the session today. We'll also share a recording of this webinar on the event website from next week, so don't worry if you miss anything, you'll have all the details in the information available to you. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Professor Song. So he's a Professor of Computer Vision and AI at the Centre for Vision, Speech and Signal Processing, also known as CVSSP, at the University of Surrey, which is one of the UK's oldest and largest research centres on artificial intelligence. He is co-director at the University of Surrey Institute for People-Centred AI and leads the SketchX lab within CVSSP.
Brilliant.
Professor Song.
Thank you so much, Amy. And then again, thank you for joining everybody this seminar. And really, we are very excited at Surrey to tell you what's going on in terms of AI at Surrey, because I'm sure probably you've heard that Surrey is one of the leading institutions in the UK in the space of AI. In particular, the Surrey Institute for People-Centred AI, which I co-direct, is a pan-university institute where then we don't really study the technical aspects of AI, but it's social technical. So the ethos is really, we don't see AI just as a technology, but AI, how can AI be embedded in people's lives? How can benefit everybody? So I think people find that a worthy vision that's also long-term, which quite differentiates Surrey from a lot of the other institutes out there. So as an institute, we don't really focus on research, but we also have a really comprehensive training provision. And we also actually have a really strong record in terms of innovation that is putting research out there in people's hands for that benefits, like I said, society at large. So, like I said, I'm very excited. I just want to talk about the institute a bit more in terms of the subtle research that we do, right? So, like I said, the strong ethos of the institute is that, yes, AI is driven by technology, and you read lots of news in terms of, different releases of ChatGPT, Gemini, and so on and so forth. And that's all amazing. So we are glad to see the technical advancements on AI. But then at Surrey, we do want to, apply unique lens, a perspective there. So we start from people, and that's why we call it people-centered AI. So what are the needs of people, and what's how AI can really benefit, not from a technical point of view, but how AI can be embedded into society, embedded into the different domains. So here you can see a lot of the research directions we tackle. For example, AI in health or for well-being. And this is something that we lead also research in terms of how AI can be put in the hands of healthcare professionals to help them, and then in turn to help patients. And then there's lots of explainable AI in there. So that is all the decisions that AI is making. We want to be transparent to the healthcare professionals and also to patients, so that AI is not black box. So we think that's really important aspect of AI in terms of healthcare and well-being. And then beneath that, you can see is AI to empower people. And that's something we strongly believe in. Because I don't know whether people recall when ChatGPT was put out there, And yes, I think there's lots of positive vibes, but there's also a lot of people don't understand it and then thinking that people might lose jobs and so on and so forth, which is true to some extent. But sorry, we want to change the narrative here to really, like I said, how we can really enable AI to empower people, but while respecting their privacy, while making sure they have full control over AI and so on and so forth. And then AI sustainability, that's really important. I'm sure people read the news in terms of, maybe one inference of ChatGPT is a glass of water or something to that, something along those lines. So AI is quite, power hungry, and yes, so training AI requires lots of energy and compute time, and then obviously cooling the AI servers. That's water as well. So here at Surrey, we have lots of good examples in terms of how we can devise efficient AI models that runs locally in a private fashion, and so that your data privacy is respected, and also the compute is really on phones and laptops other than big AI data centers. So I encourage you to look at the University of Surrey homepage. There is the latest news in terms of Surrey technology via Stability AI are now installed on all Lenovo laptops. And this is running AI models running locally to create images and videos. And on the left, to AI sustainability, you see safe and responsible AI. And then, if we really want to put AI, in the heart of society to benefit people, it has to be done in a safe and responsible manner. And this is really, we'll talk about this later on. We run this decade research center where then a lot of the technology is around how we can respect the privacy of data, how we can make sure the data that goes into the training of, say, the ChatGPTs, the Geminis, how that training process is transparent, how we can make sure, if this is a private data from an artist, for example, that there is probably some feedback in terms of royalty to that particular artist because that data is being used. And then on top of that is AI for inclusive education and media. And this is almost a legacy of the 40 years of background that we have at University of Surrey. So we work alongside BBC. We have a very large project with BBC in terms of people personalized media. So we watch Match of the Days. I don't know if you're a football fan, but then sometimes you don't want to watch the other games, but you really want to just watch the game that you support. And then the whole idea is using AI. We can personalize that experience. So everybody watch Match of the Day. They watch different bits, the bits they're interested in. And inclusion, that's also important. So we we're leading a UKRI doctor training center on inclusive digital media. And then the whole point is how we define people. Right, because it's people with different cultural backgrounds, people with different capabilities, and everybody needs to benefit from AI. And then that's what that's the ethos of inclusive AI. Hopefully that gives a very good snapshot in terms of what we mean by people-centered, and a lot of the research that we do at the People-Centered Research Institute. And we are quite large, like I said, and we are quite active in the funding landscape along those themes. So I think last year alone, we secured over 100 million research and training awards. And this is in collaboration with partners like Royal Holloway, BBC, and half of them, 45 million, actually went to Surrey. So we're very significant again in that landscape. And then part of that research award is training. So we have about 100 PhD scholarships. This is across the whole themes, like I mentioned already. So yes, so this, later on I'll talk about the different tiers of training we offer, and PhD is at the very top, and then we have MSCs, we have BSCs as well that we're rolling out. Sorry. So I think I mentioned, so those are the research themes. I think I've mentioned some of those examples already in terms of flagship research programs. Those will be part of the 100 million portfolio that we have. So the first one, I've mentioned this already. This is the Doctor Training Center training PhDs in terms of digital media inclusion. So, like I said, it's about how AI can be inclusive, and then this is through the lens of digital media. So, and then can be applied to education. This can be applied to healthcare and so on and so forth. So the idea is, how, for example, for image generation, how we can make sure, the inclusion element is respected and controllable in the face of image generation, video generation. So we're not just focusing on certain demographies or certain cultures. And so that's a really large research agenda, a PhD training agenda. So 13 million pounds for 8 years. So we'll train 80 PhD researchers. And those 80 researchers, the idea is that they'll join, DeepMind, they'll join Meta, and so on and so forth, Google, and they'll actually, carry that message, which is very important. And then we also have this Lower Home Doctor Training Network as well. And this is, a similar angle in terms of digital media inclusion accessibility. And this is led by another co-director of the center, Professor Shabin Brown. And like I said, beneath that, there's a very strong collaboration with the BBC. This is really across the past 20, 30 years. We always had a very strong relationship with the BBC. And actually, lots of our PhDs and MScs, they end up doing internships and they join BBC Research Lab as well when they finish. And this is, like I said, along the angle of personalized digital media using AI. And that's the the training, PhD training, and also the the industry partnership. But also, just very recently, we've won this grant led by Dr. Helen Cooper. So this is training all of the the IT, the technicians, the IT support behind AI. Because yes, the research is important, talent is important, but compute, I'm sure you're aware, NVIDIA, AMD, Oracle, is at the center of AI. So as a leading research institute, we have to be self-proficient in terms of our AI compute provision. And then this offers some of that. This is actually training how a lot of those really large AI centers can be run. AI compute centers can be run. And then to the right, you have this decentralized Center for Digital Economy. And this is, like I said, the data provenance, how data can be respected and how data can be traced, how private data can be used for training, how if you have some data to contribute and how that data can be attributed back to you and maybe with a royalty scheme as well. And then the professor leading that is Professor John Colomos, who also has a joint post with Adobe, and he is very famous for for being the lead academic or industry leader behind this content authenticity initiative. So if you use Photoshop or Adobe Premiere or Firefly, then a lot of this data authenticity initiative is already embedded, so that we know where the data was generated, where the data is posted, and so on and so forth. And SignGPT, this is something that Surrey is really, really proud of. So if you go to a UK train station, airport, some other countries as well, I think. So now you see, a screen with an avatar, a human avatar doing British Sign Language. And that is a research that Surrey led by Professor Rich Borden for the last 20 years. And then recently there's been a spin out from Surrey called Synapse, and really automatically converting text prompts to AI generated human avatars. And then there's also collaboration going on. So the next stage of that, how the cutting edge AI can be improved, can be used to improve that provision. That's a program grant, a very large one, 6.5 million, together with Oxford, UCL. And then the last one, this is CoStar. This is the national lab for the UK's creative industries. And this is the largest ever research grant that's been handed out by UKRI. So the whole idea is that UK creative industry is really strong. The BBC, Pinewood, 007, Harry Potter. I'm sure everybody is aware of those IP. And how AI can benefit that. Not really taking over jobs, but how AI can help to improve, can really be a co-star in terms of how a lot of those contents is created and used. So that's the whole idea behind co-star. So Royal Holloway is leading on the storytelling aspect, on the film and the television aspect, and Surrey is the AI pillar in terms of how cutting edge AI technology can be applied. So that was research and training, the research and impact through a lot of the research output we have, and then we strongly believe at Surrey that it's the people, right? It's the people that is not only the AI should serve, but it's the people that creates AI. So that's why over the years, and we've created multiple programs to sustain this talent pipeline. I'm happy to report that we've probably trained, must be over 600, 700 students already on the MSc AI, which is here. And then I think last year, the overall intake was 150. This year is already approaching 200. So most definitely one of the most popular AI programs. I think from the students, really coming out of those AI program, to join like great, large companies like Meta, Samsung, and then or some of them become entrepreneurs. There was just somebody who actually came into my room yesterday, my office, saying that he's on this entrepreneurial journey, and he graduated 2 years ago. So it's just people doing, contributing to the UK and international AI landscape, and we have this really good mix of theory and practical AI. So even you come in with zero, deep learning background, by the end of it, the program, you'll be able to train some of the models that we mentioned, already, those large models or domain-specific models. And then depends on, what you want to do, right? You can focus on a particular domain, for example, computer vision or, NLP. Or you can decide to be broad. There's lots of options you can take. So, if you choose to be broad, then obviously you can go into consultancy jobs, you can become entrepreneurs, and so on and so forth. And then actually a lot of the MSc graduates, when they finish, they become PhDs in the center. So I think every year we'll probably take 3 to 5 MScs who want to pursue PhDs. And then, obviously, if you're a PhD, when you finish, you become, scientists in DeepMind. You become, research scientists in, Sony. We have those lots of experience, lots of examples of those. And then recently, we're also, going down, towards this triangle. So we are, introducing very soon, hopefully, this year, September, or next year, AI conversion course. The whole idea is that every AI is really deeply embedded, across the whole society, different disciplines. So what we're doing is, even you are somebody without a technical background, so you probably didn't do A-level or math, or you probably don't have any programming experience, you can still benefit from learning AI. And then the whole point is you can just join us on this conversion course. And then we're also developing, CPD modules, and then AI boot camps, again, to help people to upskill from the background they have already. So, and then at the bottom, as you can see, so what's supporting all those, teaching provision is the people-centered ethos that I mentioned, that carries us through research, through our impact, all the way to our training provision. And I think over the years, students are really benefiting from that. So AI is not just technical, like I said, it's social technical. We need to understand the human element. Therefore, AI can serve people better. And then by people, like I said, the inclusion element, the EDI element, we're not just treating people as, one size fits all, right? And, everybody's different and we should respect that. So that's training, and this is just a summary of all the principles that I mentioned. The people-centered focus, the ethics, inclusion, responsible AI, explainable AI, transparency, and we're also working a lot with the government through the Alan Turing Institute in terms of policy, in terms of the AI Safety Summit or the AI Summit that we attend every year. So yeah, I think all of that is thanks to the legacy we have. I think this year is the 40th anniversary of CDSSP, which then the People-Centered AI Institute is actually this wrapper around CDSSP. So we're definitely the UK's one of the largest, but I think maybe the oldest AI institutes out there. Okay, I think with that, I'd like to conclude my talk and then hand over to Amy. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Professor Song. That was brilliant, and I always love your enthusiasm, and it makes me want to study about AI myself. So if anybody has any questions about our session today, about AI and what the University of Surrey is doing, or the exciting projects that we're working on, please do put your questions in the chat and we'll be very happy to answer them for you. So just a quick question from me. Can students take short courses in AI at the university?
Yeah. Yes, this is something we are actively putting together. So I mentioned this MSc AI conversion program that we're putting out, and in there are lots of new modules across the different sectors of AI in different domains. And then some of that will be mixed together to create short courses and also modules at different levels. So yes, we're actively doing that. But at this very moment, the answer is no. But there is a pan-Surrey module called AI 101. So that's going to be rolled out, I think, very soon now. So that's open to all students, University of Surrey and staff, to know about AI, to know about people-centered AI, and then a lot of the pros and cons, so that after that module, really the whole point is everybody can join into a meaningful discussion around AI.
Amazing. That sounds very exciting. Thank you. And we've got a question in the chat from one of our attendees just asking, so they're interested in pursuing a PhD that explores the intersection of creative media, such as K-drama and AI. I would greatly appreciate it if you could advise me on any scholarships or funding opportunities available for this area of research. I would also be grateful if you could recommend potential supervisors within the centre whose research interests might align with this topic. So that was the intersection of creative media, such as K-drama and AI.
Yeah. So that's almost the best question I can hope for, because Surrey is the strongest in this. So if you check CS rankings, Surrey is the UK's #1 in terms of visual AI, because this is dealing with media, right? So Surrey is really strong. And then also we have the CoStar network I mentioned, the largest grant, from UKRI, and that's actually engaging with industry as well. So Pinewood, BBC, and obviously I think this angle of K-drama and is really very, very relevant. And yes, there are lots of scholarship because we are really well funded as an institute. So there are lots of opportunities. And like I said, some of the MSc students, they go, they're fully funded to become a PhD candidate. And in terms of who will be good, I think so. Professor Adrian Hilton, He's a fellow of the Royal Academy of Engineering. He's also director of the institute. He'll be really, really good. Professor John Colomos, who's also really good, and then myself as well. My research is also along this area. So yes, I think if it's in terms of creative media and anything to do with visual AI, I think Surrey is a very, very strong candidate.
Thank you. And another question that we've had come in. So how is AI integrated into teaching and learning of other programs? For example, for a student looking for business-themed masters?
Yeah. So at Surrey, we have this AI education framework, where then actually from this semester or the next semester, all modules AI will have the Surrey provides will have AI elements, because we care strongly about the future prospects of our students. And in this day and age, I think it's safe to say that that you do need some awareness of AI. Doesn't matter which domain that you study. So yes, I think outside of what I mentioned, that triangle I show, that's the Surrey AI Institute. But overall, as a university, Surrey has a very strong focus on AI.
Thank you very much. And if students want to use AI ethically within their studies, what would you encourage them to do?
So this was discussed in depth inside this AI 101 module that will roll out, I think, for prospective students here. And by the time you arrive or accept the offer, that module will be available already. So I mean, I think we can think about opening that module to our students, to our offer holders as well. So and then there's lots of examples given on AI ethics, how to use it ethically, how to be aware of where your data goes to, and then how to gain access to private models and all of that. So that's been discussed in depth in that particular module.
Thank you very much. Another question that we've had come through, a student saying, I would like to hear more about the AI for translation interpreting masters, and if it is more progressive than the MA translation and interpreting without AI in terms of PhDs and the world of work. Also, how do the courses differ?
Yeah. So we do have lots of shared modules. And actually, Shabin, who is a co-director of the Surrey AI Institute, she actually, I think, runs this particular MSc that's in question. So yes, there's some AI elements in there. And the good news about how Surrey is, because there's lots of sharing going on, a lot of the new modules I mentioned, for example, in the conversion module, conversion program, there's one called AI for AI plus communication and translation. So that module then will also be offered on some of this programs on translation and interpretation that's already there. So yeah, and hopefully that answers that question.
Thank you very much. And another question that we've had come through. So we've got a prospective student who says, I'm finishing a bachelor's degree in computer science right now. So will this master's degree in AI be beneficial for me? And will most of it link with each other?
So we have loads of students who have a similar background, computer science, engineering, who then go on join us on the MSc in AI, and I think helps them. I mean, from what I heard, feedback from the students that finished the programs and got on with different jobs and career path, they find that really beneficial, not just on the AI element, but how the people-centered element. I think that broad vision helped them a lot, and that's again something that is unique. So if you look at some of other programs, I think the general consensus is that it's very technical. But because you already have an AI CS background, I don't think a lot of that technical, that extension in terms of the technical angle is too important in the face of AI, people-centered AI, and how AI can benefit people.
Thank you. And another question that we've had come through, I believe that they're referring to the Masters in AI. What kind of job roles can you expect from this degree?
Yeah. So I think most people find jobs really easily. I mean, again, probably you have some more statistics, but on the MSc AI program, I think they end up doing, AI engineers, some becomes AI researchers, some becomes PhD candidates, and they join big companies, enterprises, some join startups, and some become entrepreneurs themselves because the overall portfolio we offer, is quite comprehensive. So it sustains a lot of different career paths.
Yeah, and I think that was really interesting what you mentioned during your presentation, that you said that we've got that connection with the BBC, and a lot of students go on to do internships with the BBC and work in their research labs as well.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Well, that seems to be the end of our questions for now. So thank you very much for taking the time to answer those, Professor Song. So a recording of this webinar will be on our event webpage next week if you want to go back and re-watch any of what we've talked about today. If you still have questions that you think of later or that we didn't get around to today, you could drop us an email and we'll happily follow up with you. So if you're a UK student, you can email study@surrey.ac.uk. And if you're an international student, you can email international@surrey.ac.uk. Don't forget, full information on everything happening this week during our events is available on our Postgraduate Virtual Open Days event website. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. Thank you to our panel. Thank you, Professor Song, and we wish you all the very best.